All right, everybody. Happy New Year and welcome to episode 9 of the Fantasy Timeline. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I am with my main man, Bill at Super Duper Flex. Bill, Happy New Year. How you feeling, man?
Happy New Year, brother. Good. Ready to get this rolling. Exciting 2020. We're gonna have some good guests coming up. A few. I think we have five different people that we have lined up.
Yeah,
Not scheduled, but lined up.
yeah, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of just really smart, really cool fantasy people have said they're willing to give us a little bit of their time to help us out, but also to help all you listeners out. So as we start lining them up and getting concrete dates, follow Fantasy Timeline on Twitter at Fantasy Timeline. We're going to be dropping news and tidbits and all that stuff. It's going to be fun. So as you said, 2020 has been crazy already, and this past week we switched from Monday to Wednesdays, and it seems like a good thing because over the last couple of days, it seems like a lot of these head coaching positions have been shored up. Teams have found their man, or they think they have found their men. So we're going to start it off, and we're going to try to dive into a little fantasy impact for each of these guys. So Joe Judge is now the new head coach in New York, and not Judge Joe Brown, not Judge Judy. Joe Judge, the longtime special teams coordinator and wide receiver coach over this past year for the Patriots, is now in New York. So, how do you think that affects the big dogs in New York? Danny Dimes, any of the wide receivers, and Evan Ingram.
I don't know. I just it's so hard to say. I mean, he's a special teams coach. How does that how does he impact the offense? I have no idea. I think it really just depends on who they end up hiring for their OC. But I wouldn't expect it to be too Jason Garrett.
It's been rumored.
I don't know. It that probably is what it depends on more so than him. I think he's probably a really good leader, delegator, that sort of thing, and that's why he was given this job. And I mean, I know he's worked under Saban and Belichick, so those are two pretty good dudes to learn from. And so, I mean, I think it's a good hire. It's funny, on the show sheet you wrote Judge to New York, and the first thing that popped in my head was Aaron Judge. So I'm like, why are we talking about outfielders? But so I mean, it could be a great hire. I'm always I don't react to this news too much, just because you don't know how much say they're going to have into play calling and that sort of thing. If they're more like, just kind of the CFO or the CEO kind of just directing everything. So we'll find out.
Yeah, it's an interesting move. We were chatting a little bit before we went live here, and was talking about the fact that I was listening to the Stick to Football podcast, which is a really cool and fun podcast. And one of the hosts was texting a current player on the Patriots, which he didn't name, and that guy said that he's a really smart guy, and he was actually the guy that ran the room when Bill Belichick couldn't be there for some reason. So obviously Belichick had enough confidence in him to be the de facto leader when he wasn't around. So, I mean, it should be interesting. The one thing I was happy about is that we actually saw special teams coach moved into the head coaching position. A lot of times those guys get passed over no matter how good they are at their job, just because for some reason special teams isn't given the same level of credit that offense and defense is given. And whether you love or hate the Patriots, they've always had really good special teams units. So if he can convert that to the entire team, New York has a talent. They might actually be able to do something. So let's stay in the NFC East here. Mike McCarthy goes to Dallas while Jason Garrett is still technically in Dallas. And that's a whole weird thing. But Mike McCarthy to Dallas. And there's one player that I want to talk about because I've seen a lot of tweets. Brian Harr put out a tweet about this, and I've seen a few other people do so as well. They're worried about Zeke Elliott's usage based on the fact that when McCarthy was in Green Bay, there wasn't a robust, let's call it, run game. And when he had Jamal Williams and I almost said Aaron Judge, Aaron Jones, it seemed like he almost never picked the right guy to carry the load. So are you worried at all about maybe Zeke getting less touches or Tony Pollard becoming more a part of the running game? Or I've even heard some rumors that Dallas might go ahead and try to get another running back in this year's draft due to the depth at the position.
I mean, I'm kind of worried about that anyway, regardless of who the coach is, that Pollard's going to get more play.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's going to necessarily be McCarthy. But I don't think that he's going to give you 50-50 split like he did with Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. And I'm pretty sure that Jerry's not going to let that happen.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm not worried about that too much. He's not had a running back like Zeke. I mean, as much as people want to say Aaron Jones, but by the time I got to this point, I think that the last few years were just super toxic for the Packers. Mm-hmm. Between the players and McCarthy. That, like, I think that he's coming in. Jerry Jones has his expectations laid mm-hmm. out, and I think he knows what he has, and he's not gonna just completely limit him. But the issue that I see this in fantasy, Twitter and all the time, people complaining about why do they play these two running backs? Mm-hmm. If they only played so and so all the time, look how much more dominant he is. And
right.
People don't think about, like, okay, you're thinking about your fantasy league up through week 14, 15, 16. Right. These guys aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about keeping those guys fresh for the whole season, including the playoffs. So it's kind of comical when people, fantasy-wise, are complaining about usage of some of the top-end players. Over the course of time, as they age, they're just bound to not get as many touches. And we see that with every single running back. So, yeah. I mean, I do expect them. I expect Zeke to every year to kind of lose a few percentage of touches, just as he ages.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting all around. I mean, I saw a lot of people on Twitter slamming Mike McCarthy as the coach to the Cowboys. And as a fan, I was surprised. I thought the coaching search was going to take a little bit longer. It seemed that it was announced on Sunday that Garrett wouldn't be coming back. And then Monday it was announced that McCarthy was the guy. So I thought I thought the search was going to take a little bit longer. But I think what people fail to realize too is that Mike McCarthy was a good coach. The last couple of years in Green Bay were not good, and no one can argue that. But, I mean, he did take the Packers to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl. The offense was always kind of clicking, except for those last couple of years. They had Aaron Rodgers, they had Jordy Nelson, they had Devontae Adams, they had Randall Cobb. So I don't think it's an issue of the man not having the coaching chops or not having the ability to coach. I think sometimes we get into a little bit of that recency bias where we associate what a coach did in their last year or two, and kind of imprint that on their whole career. It's a little unfair with McCarthy, but we'll find out. I mean, he's hired a few assistant coaches already, and I think they all have NFL head coaching experience. So, I mean, on paper, he's building a good staff, but obviously, at the end of the day, what happens on the field, wins and losses, and the such. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Zeke. Not only Zeke, but Dak Prescott, if Amari Cooper comes back, Michael Gallup, so on and so on. So the last one is Matt Rule in Carolina. From everything I've seen on Twitter, this seems to be the pick that the Twitterverse likes the most. They believe that the Carolina offense will become even more high flying. It's kind of hard. The guy's never had a head coaching job in the NFL, but he has turned around Temple and Baylor. So Bill, are you buying your DJ Moores, your Cam Newtons, and the rest?
Well, just back to McCarthy for a second.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people were hoping that, Cowboys might hire Rule or
Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. But I mean, Dallas is built to win right now. So you don't want to go and just throw in somebody who doesn't have the experience of running an NFL organization.
Right.
You could throw McCarthy in there for a few years, and then if things don't work out, you can always go back and hire one of those guys. Maybe not Rule, obviously, but you can hire Riley then if he's still around. But he's exciting. He reminds me kind of a lot of Urban Meyer, just kind of how he started out at Bowling Green, and they had an incredible offense, and he kind of moved to not the biggest school, but a big school at Utah. And then afterwards, he went to Florida. Well, Rule going to Carolina, obviously a huge step. And, that's something that it's exciting, but it's so hard to tell when a guy changes levels. You're used to coaching up 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds. Now you're coaching men. How are those guys going to respond to your coaching philosophies? How there's so many. How are the coaches you hire in the NFL going to react to you? Right. There's so many things that are unknown. And it's exciting. I don't know a whole lot about him. I don't know if his offense is prolific. Baylor's always been one of those kind of schools that can always get the talent, and they always are good. At least for the last decade or so, they're pretty good. So I don't know how much of that's truly him and how much of it's just the Texas talent and but if it's the system's good, then great, and hopefully it is. Obviously Carolina believes it if they gave him a 7-year contract. That's insane. Like, what in the hell? And then the Giants were interested in him too. So it kind of shows you, like, it's not just one team, and the Giants are usually, they're typically committed to their coaches. So, it's kind of like, it's interesting. I'm excited to see, I know a lot of people in North Carolina that are huge Panther fans, and they're stoked. So, we'll see. I don't know how it's going to affect McCaffrey. I don't know his philosophies. So I just unfortunately can't speak too much to what my expectations are.
I live pretty close to Philly, so when he was here at Temple, he pretty much turned Temple from a laughing stock as a program to a perennial bowl contender, which is not easy. You're not drawing, like you said, kind of at Baylor. You're not drawing from the Texas, Florida, Oklahoma kind of those panhandle states. You're not drawing from that talent. You're kind of having to pick up kind of the players that fall through the cracks and the players that don't get drafted don't get recruited to other places. And he did a pretty good job there. And then, Baylor, if you remember, Baylor had that whole big scandal, and they were on death's door. I think they had won one game the year before he came there, and they were in a bowl game this year playing Georgia. So I think Carolina is believing in the fact that he can build a program, and in this case, he can build an organization that can win. And I think they gave him 7 years because they realized that it might take him 2, 3, 4 years to get all the pieces into place to contend. And it's good to see that they have a long-term plan. They're not just looking for a guy who's going to come in this year and, win 10 games or take them to a Super Bowl. They realize kind of where they are in the process of things. They have some nice young pieces. They have DJ Moore. They have Christian McCaffrey. But they also realize that they need some other things to fall into place, mainly at QB, in order to be a contender. So, those three coaches are new places. That's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to see what happens not only on the field, but with all of our fantasy teams here. So we're going to go to what we saw on the timeline, and I want to start this off with a very interesting question here. So this is from our boy J Money Jarrett at J Money Jarrett. This is a full PPR. What about these two head to head? Who you got? Keenan Allen or Calvin Ridley? So I kind of took this as who would you draft first in a startup? Not necessarily who would I want in a trade, even though if it was in a trade, I think I would still pick the same answer. I went with Keenan Allen. I know that there's going to be some anxiety about who becomes the quarterback or who stays the quarterback in Los Angeles, whether it's Rivers, whether it's a free agent. Maybe they draft a guy. Maybe they draft a Justin Herbert. Maybe they trade up and get a Tua. Maybe they wait to the second or third round to find a guy and have Tyrod go this year. But Keenan Allen is a beast, and I think he's one of the more perennially. That's not how you say that word, but I'm going with it. All right, English. Underrated wide receivers every year. Yes, I know he can go into some funks where he just destroys your fantasy team, but he also kind of goes into those same swings where he is just grabbing tons of points and is leading your team to victory. I've come around a little bit on Calvin Ridley, but I mean, he's still going to be handicapped by Julio if Austin Hooper is re-signed, if Devontae Freeman stays the starting running back, or if they grab somebody in the draft or from free agency that can catch the ball. So my answer was Keenan Allen. I think I would take him first in a startup or just one for one in a trade. Bill, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Keenan's quarterback proof, just the way he plays. He's more of the, kind of the intermediate wide receiver, and he's the number one wide receiver. So right there, that alone makes me want him over Ridley. I mean, I have way more Ridley than I do Allen, I think, just based on the price the last year or two. But if I had to pick one or the other, just somebody's offering me them, I'm going to take Keenan. And And I think he's a good wide receiver actually for a young or new quarterback. And if Rivers comes back, I mean, I don't think he can throw it to Mike Williams. So
Yeah.
Keenan Allen's going to be the guy. And Julio is a huge roadblock for Ridley's upside. His ceiling is capped because of that. So, yeah, I am definitely going Keenan.
Yeah, and it's funny you brought up Mike Williams. I received a trade offer yesterday in one of the leagues I'm in, and I was going to counter and ask for Mike Williams, and then I kind of thought, man, I don't know who the quarterback in LA is going to be, and I don't know, especially like you said, if it's Rivers, I don't even know if that quarterback will be able to get him the ball. I wouldn't have that fear with Keenan Allen, whether Rivers was the quarterback or not. He's an elite guy that doesn't get the elite guy press, so to speak. And he's a guy, I do 2 or 3 redrafts every year, and he's a guy that I always get because he's just criminally undervalued even in redraft. So we're in the majority here. It is 57-43 in favor of Keenan Allen. So, like I always say, look at these polls, and if it's something close like that, you're a contender, you have Calvin Ridley, maybe you knock on the door of the Keenan Allen owner and see if he wants to trade you straight up. If you're, maybe you're one receiver away from, maybe you were in the championship and you lost, or you won the 3rd place game and you're a receiver away. You have to analyze your team, but sometimes those trades, while yes, you're losing out on the future of Calvin Ridley, if that trade helps get you a championship, it really doesn't matter. So the next one we got was Dynasty Trades at Burner Dynasty 1. Derrick Henry, running back 2 in standard scoring, running back 5 in PPR, is about to become an unrestricted free agent. With all the unknown on his future, what do you prefer? So, Derrick Henry or the 1.02? I'll start this off. I said Henry. The guy is big, strong, fast, and Tennessee has proven that they are willing to give him the touches. I think he will be re-signed to Tennessee just because they realize what a force he is for that offense, and that actually allows them to either franchise or sign someone like Ryan Tannehill to a not top 10 wide receiver contract for 2 or 3 years, because they realize that the offense is going to go through the run game and not the passing game. So, Bill, 102 or Derrick Henry?
I think I'm going to go the 102. Yeah, I'm not a huge Derrick Henry guy. I mean, he's not catching the ball a lot. Yes, he did lead the league in rushing, but he is a year or 2 away from potentially, he's a big back that is fast. I mean, is he going to start losing his speed? How much does that affect him? Plus, his situation, I agree. I think he's going to end up in Tennessee, but we don't know that. And, as much as we say it's an unknown for the rookies coming in, I mean, it's still somewhat of an unknown for Henry. I mean, if you take Henry, you're banking on the next year, maybe 2. I feel like I might be able to get more for the 102 in a couple months. And so that's why I would take the pick. But if I was a contender, I mean, it's hard to pass up Henry.
Right.
I mean, standard scoring, I guess that's a positive. Or no, is he saying it's a standard?
I think he was saying that he was RB2 in standard scoring,
gotcha.
RB5 in PPR. So I don't think he really stated.
Just breaking it down. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's that much higher than probably any of the top 10 running backs when it's all said and done, based on points per game. So I don't know. I think I go with the 102 just as a value play in a vacuum. But if I needed a running back, I mean, it's pretty easy to, take Henry.
So you brought up kind of age in the discussion. So I did a little deep dive, not so deep dive into this. So I picked out two other guys that were drafted in the same draft that Derrick Henry was. So Zeke has 1,358 touches. Jordan Howard has 979 touches. Derrick Henry only has 861 touches. So he has over 100 less than Jordan Howard. Doesn't have the injury history that Jordan Howard has. So while they're all around the same age, Derrick Henry doesn't have as much tread on the tires, which is, I think, another reason why I would be a kind of more of a fan of Henry in this situation. Don't get me wrong, Zeke is elite. You're not trading the 102 for Zeke. No one's taking that deal. But on the flip side, no one would give you the 102 for Jordan Howard, and Jordan Howard has over 100 more touches. So it's just interesting from that aspect alone. When you talk about Henry and kind of age and what he's done in the league so far.
Yeah, I think touches are, something to take into account. I don't think it's the be all end all. I mean, that's like maybe 1.5 seasons less than Zeke, but
Right.
I mean, age is age. And I mean, David Johnson didn't have a ton of touches, and, just sometimes age and just, it's not like Derrick Henry's making defenders miss. So he's getting hit when he gets hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
And so his body's going to be taking a beating over time. And these big backs always seem to, degrade at a higher clip than somebody who's a little more, shifty. I would be more worried about long-term Henry than Kamara, so that,
right.
So it's just kind of one of those things where, running backs, I'm not looking typically to trade for 26, 27-year-old running backs, but I mean, I get it. I mean, if you could hope to get 2-3 more big time years out of Derrick Henry, and I think that's potentially, something that could happen. But at the same time, we're talking about Zeke, them potentially stepping down his touches. I mean, it seems like Dion Lewis hardly got any touches this year. So, I mean, if they draft anybody of note this year, I mean, I think it's just expected that he's not going to get quite as many touches as he did this year.
And it'll be interesting because Superflex Guru didn't. I'm sorry, not Superflex Guru. Jesus Christ! If I could read, okay.
Burner Dynasty 1.
Didn't mention if this was a Superflex or not, but if it is, 102 is almost guaranteed to probably be the first running back,
right?
Whoever that ends up being, depending on landing spot and so on and so forth. So that'll be interesting to see, because you might be talking about DeAndre Swift or Jonathan Taylor or J.K. Dobbins, depending on landing spots, and you might have 6 years of DeAndre Swift in Miami or J.K. Dobbins in Kansas City, or,
right.
Insert rookie into good landing spot, and that could be the 102. So, 2 years of, potentially 2 years of Henry or 6 years of the top rookie running back. So,
and again, it's unknown. So, I mean, it's if I'm a contender, I think I'm taking Henry in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, like, you know, if you're in any sort of rebuild, Derrick Henry's not going to do what you need.
No.
Because he's going to help you win. So
Yeah, exactly.
why not go for the young guy and hope for big time upside?
And that's even a move I think I would pull off where I take the 102, trade Henry away, and then try to package that 102 and move down, and maybe, there's probably at least one guy in your league that has 4 or 5 first round picks. Talk to that guy about moving down from 2 and getting, 4 and 8 or 4 and 6, something like that, and kind of spread your wealth, especially if you're in a rebuild and you get multiple firsts. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, especially this year because I really think that the value between, if it's not super flex, I think the value between 101 and 105 or 106 is pretty flat. So like everybody looks at these numbers and says 101, until we know landing spot. Any of like 6 guys could be the 101. It reminds me a lot of the year with Corey Davis and Fournette. People, it was up through 105, right? You had Dalvin Cook, McCaffrey, Mixon, Corey Davis, and Fournette. And people were happy with any of those guys. And there really wasn't a huge value drop between 101 and 105.
Right.
And so I think, and I don't know the exact number of who, people value to make. Is it 6, 7, 8 guys that are all similarly valued right this year? I don't know, but I think we're going to see like that people aren't going to be willing to trade up too much this year.
Right.
Because of that situation.
And, just people on Twitter that I trust and respect, I've heard this draft goes up to 24 deep where you're getting a guy you're going to like. Not necessarily you're getting an elite guy or you're getting an RB1 or a wide receiver 1, but you're going to be happy with 24. You're not going to be kind of just grabbing in the dark and hoping that you trip and fall onto a good pick, that you're going to pick someone and say, oh, wow, this guy was good in college. I'm happy with this pick, which is rare. You don't hear that a lot, even during prime time, which is right now of, draft Twitter guys. So,
I felt that way last year, to be honest with you. When we got through the second round of drafts last year, there were still guys that I was happy to get. Deontay Johnson, who was, now I'm going to be drawing blanks on everybody's names.
That's all right.
But there's the tight end. There's
Irv Smith.
Smith was a little bit before that, I think. But who's the Green Bay tight end?
Jay
Sternberger. Justice Hill. All those guys are kind of in that range. And I was happy up to like 302 in drafts. So, people say the 204 or I'm sorry, the top 24. I don't know. Is it really that different than last year? Or maybe once I dig in, I'll be excited to get through 36.
Right.
So who knows? But it's so hard to tell right now. And it's just all we got to do. And people are going to hate me for this, but all you got to do is pay attention to the hype train and write these down, what everybody's hyping. And then here's the secret. And hey, I do draft stuff. I'm starting to I just made my list of all the guys I'm going to be researching for quarterbacks for the Rookie Digest. And, but here's the secret: draft capital. That's all that matters. I don't care what everybody else says. That's your safest way of determining who's, and it's not perfect, but it's the best. And, pay attention to, like, for example, Daniel Jones. the whole industry was telling you Daniel Jones sucks. I mean, including super respected people. And, you know, in my research, I thought he sucked too. So, like, he was my 5th quarterback, but he was drafted 6th overall.
Right.
Draft capital. Josh Allen 2 years ago.
Oh, man.
Draft capital. He was getting drafted in the 2nd round last year. Both of those guys were drafted in 2nd round in super flex leagues. And so, and even Deontay Johnson, like, he fell real far, but he was drafted early-ish.
Yes.
But people didn't pick DJ Chark. Same thing. He was a 2nd round pick. You know, there's all these guys that it's the inefficiency between the hype train that is the dynasty industry or draft industry hype train and what the NFL does. And those are the players you keep an eye on. You draft those guys, and you're going to be sitting pretty once the season starts, because those are the guys that, you know, you got that were inefficiencies in the dynasty draft, in your dynasty drafts, because people didn't hear those names for the last 3-4 months, or they're using somebody's, draft review that hasn't been updated to take into account the NFL draft. So this next 3-4 months, treat it as entertainment. Pay attention to who's getting hyped, and there's your secret recipe for dynasty draft success in May.
And just to jump on top of that, and actually, one of the biggest examples from this year, AJ Brown.
Yep.
Guy gets taken in the 2nd round, and everyone dumps on him because, Tennessee took him. They haven't been able to figure out.
Yeah,
they haven't figured out what the hell to do with Corey Davis, and he was a top 5 pick. How are they going to figure out what to do with AJ Brown? They took the guy in the 2nd round for a reason. I argued, and this is a fun time of year for all of us, because we all have our guys that we look at and we say, these guys are going to be the guys. We have our guys. And there are another whole group of people that think your guy or your guys are not going to be the guys. I argued with people about Deebo Samuel. And I said, did you watch the guy play? I watched the guy play. Guy's good. Guy's got talent. He is taken at the top of the 2nd round. So obviously the 49ers believe he's good and are going to use him. I mean, he wasn't taken pick 152. He wasn't taken pick 89. He was a top 40 pick. Those guys, they get used. That's just the way the NFL works. And, I heard about Dante Pettis, and I heard about,
To be fair, he was taken in the 2nd round also, but
yeah. I mean, but obviously, this was just my opinion. They obviously didn't think enough of him to do something else with that top 2nd round pick.
Sure.
They had other holes to fill. Now, obviously, watching this year, and they go, oh, maybe they didn't have that many holes, but they had other holes to fill. And what they thought of Dante Pettis was, we need to get another guy at the top of the 2nd round in order to give us some more offensive firepower. So, I heard all the excuses. Jimmy Garoppolo is just not that good. You can't escape the vortex that's George Kittle. I'm not going to be wrong. George Kittle is the number 1 receiving option. It doesn't matter what position he plays. He's the number 1 receiving option. But I knew Deebo Samuel was going to have a role, and he was going to have a good role. Maybe not an elite role, maybe not a awesome role, but a role. They even brought Emmanuel Sanders in, and the guy's still putting up stats. So, like you said, just to get it all the way back around to what you said originally, draft capital matters. It does, because NFL teams don't want to be wrong. They're going to try to trot out that guy, even if he's not successful right away, because the last thing they want to have to admit to their fan bases is, we took this 1st round pick, we took this 2nd round pick, we took this 3rd round pick, and we were dead wrong about that guy. They don't want to do it. So they're going to try to put those guys in situations to succeed. And, you got to keep an eye on it. It's going to be fun because, we're going to hear hype trains about everybody. Get ready. Every wide receiver that's coming out this year is going to have a hype train. It seems like every running back that comes out is going to have a hype train. At some point, you're even going to be hearing the Jordan Love hype train, the Jake Fromm hype train, because once you get past the top 3 quarterbacks, you got to hype somebody. Somebody's got to be
So I saw somebody, I forget who it was. It was Mitch from Superflexology, and they were talking about the quarterbacks this year, and he said there's like he thinks there's 2 elite quarterbacks or 2 very, very good quarterbacks, 1 meh quarterback, and then a bunch of like, potential plays. It's not. And I'm trying to think of who the third one is that he think is meh, because like we'll see, but like I don't even know who the top 3 are because I'm trying to keep my brain in a bubble before I do my reviews this year. So I'm trying not to pay too much. I mean, I know that Burrow and Tua are the top 2, but I don't even know who the third person's supposed to be in the industry at the moment. So,
well, it seems like number 3 is Herbert.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, I think it's going to be, Burrow, Tua, Herbert, and then you're going to have, at some point, and I mean, you can write it down now. At some point, Love is going to get some hype. Fromm is going to get some hype. What do we got here?
This is just my list of who I'm reviewing. So, look who the third person is on my list.
I can't really see. Jordan Love.
I mean, it's not any order. I'm not ranking it because Burrow's number 4 on here, but but yeah, it's we'll see. It'll be interesting. There's always going to be some guys that jump up, and I like how we've derailed this completely, our conversation, but
it's all good. That's what we do.
I just think that people pick players that they remember podcasts and Twitter talk so much about over. Hakeem Butler, perfect example. People are drafting even Kelvin Harmon.
Yep.
Those 2 guys still picked super early in drafts over Deontay Johnson, who was picked 3 rounds ahead of him, in some cases. And, that's the inefficiencies in the draft where that we don't know, like that's where you can make your money. Yeah. Let somebody else take those guys who were hyped up over the last 3-4 months and got drafted in the 6th round.
Yeah.
And you pick the guys who nobody's talking about that got drafted in the 2nd and 3rd round. And that's where you're going to win. That's how you're going to beat most people in your league in your draft. So just pay attention to that. And we have a guest here, Kyle Martins, who is a member of the draft community, and I'm sure he agrees with my comment for the most part. Obviously, we all enjoy researching the players and all that, but we all have our favorites, and that's fun. And I mean, some people are better than others at it. I don't consider myself great at it, but I'm getting better. And when you get the win, when you pick somebody like I did with Minshew last year, then you feel good about it. But I'm sure this year I'm going to be like planting my flag on somebody who gets like as an undrafted free agent that never gets any opportunity. So
and Kyle kind of hits the nail on the head. There are going to be a ton of RB trains this year. I mean, we're gonna hear about guys. Not only are we going to hear about the top guys, but we're going to hear about there's this guy that played at Valdosta State. Check him out, and like you said, that guy's going to go in the 6th round, the 7th round, undrafted. But the hype train is going to be in such full effect that that guy, instead of being a fourth or fifth round rookie pick if your drafts go that far. He's going to get bumped to the third because the train has just been, and it's like you said, we see these guys every year. We see the hype trains that just get out of control, and all of a sudden we're left with the wreckage of that train on our roster that we can't get rid of. So we took it off the tracks, but we're gonna try to turn it back on just a little bit. We'll go through this one quickly. Superflex Guru at FF Superflex Guru. Really want to keep my picks, but this offer just hit my inbox. 12-team tight end premium, full PPR Superflex. The 102, 104, 106, and 202 for Travis Kelce and Davante Adams. Bill?
I'm taking the players. I think Davante Adams is still a top 4 wide receiver. I mean, when he came back, I think he was a top 2 or 3 points per game after he returned. So I'll take a top 5 wide receiver and the top tight end for 3 firsts and a second.
I agree with you on this. And that's why I said I figured we'd be able to get through this one quickly because I had a good idea that you were gonna go with the players on this as well. This is one of these situations, and I'm going to keep bringing these types of trades up all during the non-point scoring season, as it's now called. These picks are just going to increase in value. I mean, 3 firsts sounds like a lot, but we're talking about Davante Adams and we're talking about Travis Kelce. Each of those guys, minimum, are worth 2 firsts. Minimum. And I think Kelce is worth about 2 firsts if you're a contender. This is a tight end premium. Davante Adams may even be worth more if you're going just purely in picks. If you're in a rebuild and you have Kelce and Adams, man, I kind of don't know how you're in a rebuild with those 2 guys. Should be pretty good, but things happen. Don't just go for picks. Don't get me wrong. Picks are good, but why can't you get a young stud and some picks? Get a young guy that's proven he can do it. We just talked about him with Deebo Samuel. Maybe Curtis Samuel. If you like him, get DJ Moore in a first for Davante Adams if you can. Get those young guys that you've already seen do it on top of picks because, 102, 104, 106, those all sound good, but, most of the analysts say you have a 50% hit rate on first-round picks. So 1, maybe 2 of those guys will work out for you.
Yeah, just say you got 2, and if you're really lucky, you get 3 of those guys to hit. Well, when they hit, are they going to be Davante Adams and Travis Kelce?
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, you could have 3 guys hit, and they're all like wide receiver, running back. Maybe the running back 12, and 2 wide receiver 2s.
Right.
That's still not Davante Adams and Travis Kelce.
Nope.
So, and you got to hit on 3 of those 4 picks. So, tough to turn down those players.
And the reason why I wanted to throw this trade in there too is because of the poll. This was 59-41 in favor of the players, which is actually a lot closer than I thought it would be. This just goes to show
the power of the pick.
Yeah, and if you did stockpile the picks, maybe you were that guy in your league. I see people bragging, I got 6 this year, I got 7 this year, I got 8 this year. Convert some of those guys into players. If you can give up 3 firsts and get yourself Travis Kelce and Davante Adams, if you can get Zach Ertz and Julio Jones, or maybe not Julio Jones, those are 2 bad examples because they're not young. But you know what I mean? Or if you're, if somehow you got a bunch of picks and you have a good team on top of it, maybe you do go for, Zach Ertz and Julio Jones. convert some of those picks into players that can actually get the job done. Because even with 8 picks at 50%, only 4 of them are going to pan out. And like you said, Bill, just because they pan out doesn't mean you're getting top 5 guys at the position. You might get a top 12 guy and 2 top 36 guys, and that's not going to replace, 2 elite guys like Kelsey and Adams. So we're going to go here. We're going to go to this trade that you brought on here. Superflex Guru at Superflex Guru. Obviously,
yeah, same guy.
Yeah, right. 2 for 1 today.
Yeah.
This is another one. Obviously, a Superflex league. He's the guru. I couldn't imagine him playing in anything else. The 110 or Jared Goff.
Yeah, so this is ridiculous. The 110, you have no idea what you're getting. And I had a conversation, actually a pretty good conversation with somebody in this thread. But I said that I thought that the results were comical. And then Superflex Guru asked me if I was a fan of Goff, and I said no, I'm a fan of trading a late first for a starting quarterback. And especially, Goff is at least, let's say, a top 15 quarterback in the league. So he's like a high end QB2 in Superflex.
Mm-hmm.
And to move a 110 for a guy that you're going to start every week is just ridiculously low. And so I thought that the results were just ridiculous, that actually slightly more people wanted the pick than Goff. And somebody mentioned, well, Herbert might fall to 110. I said, okay, well, you're banking on Herbert falling to the 110 or one of those other quarterbacks falling into a good situation, and then they got to turn out to be good. So there's multiple things that you got to hope for. Goff is pretty much stuck with the Rams for the next 3 years. And he has a coach that I feel is a good offensive mind. And, if he can adjust to what happened this year, he could fall back into being a low-end QB1.
Mm-hmm.
And so any quarterback that's a top 18 quarterback and you can move a late first for, do it. I don't even think that you should ever hesitate in that. So, if I have 3 quarterbacks that I'm super happy about, I'm still making that trade.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And when I saw that this poll was 51-49 for Goff, or I'm sorry, for the pick, I didn't know what to say, because you said it all. Even if Jared Goff is only the 15th best quarterback for the next 6 years, what's 110? 110 could be Herbert. Herbert might end up, let's just the draft order in my head, could end up in Indianapolis, let's say. They have a top 10 pick. They may say Jacoby Brissett's not the answer. Justin Herbert with Paris Campbell, with T.Y. Hilton, with Marlon Mack, whatever other assets they bring in during the offseason, that's a pretty good offense.
Sure.
And if Justin Herbert is the ringleader, let's say, of that offense, yeah, he could be top 15 every year for the next 6 years too. But what if he goes to what if he drops?
Well, you have 2 ifs in there, right? You have an if he ends up on this team and if he ends up good.
Right. but what if he ends up, and I want to take it to the other extreme too. What if he ends up maybe Miami doesn't take 2 in the first round, or with their fifth pick. Maybe I think they have 18 or 21, 22, something like that. What if with that third first round pick, Herbert takes a dive and they take Herbert? Well, now all of a sudden, yeah, Devontae Parker's there. He was good last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Preston Williams was good with Ryan Fitzpatrick. There's no running game to speak of right now. The offensive line is dreadful. Justin Herbert ends up in Miami. Now all of a sudden, it might be 3 years before you get a top 15 finish out of him, if you get it at all.
Yep.
And that's the thing. You are banking on one or the other. I shouldn't say you're banking on one or the other, but if you're saying I'm trading the 110 for Goff, you have to say Goff is going to end up, or I'm sorry, Herbert's going to end up on a team like Indy, where there's a lot of firepower, or like Carolina, where there's a lot of firepower, and he just kind of needs to step in and be good. And Kyle hit the nail on the head too. If he ends up in Indy, if he ends up in Carolina, does he last to 110? Probably not. He's probably 1-6, 1-7, 1-8, something like that, because I have a feeling that Tua still goes top 4, even in Miami, just because of what he could be. And I mean, we've seen it at Alabama. It's just his injury history has gotten a hold of him. But, if Herbert ends up on one of those high-powered teams, I think Kyle's right. I don't think he gets to 110.
I think there's this was part of the conversation actually on that Twitter conversation, and it's a deep class. And so I could see some quarterbacks falling. I mean, you just got to remember, like, what was it, 2 years ago when there was 4, 5 first-round quarterbacks taken, there are still guys were falling into the second round in those drafts. And that draft wasn't as deep in other positions.
Yes.
So, I mean, I could still see him at 10, but I agree. Like, you're still making this decision to take the 110, not knowing the situation. There's so much unknown for you right now. If you're going, okay, well, I might end up getting Herbert, and that's the only guy I like other than the top 2 quarterbacks, and then he ends up having some sort of health issue, and he drops to a 4th rounder. Now you have this 110, and you don't have a starting quarterback in a super flex league.
Right.
So that's the point on the whole thing, in my opinion. I mean, there's so many ifs if you take that pick, if you're shooting to get a quarterback.
Yeah, and I agree. In super flex leagues, you don't give up, top 15, even top 20 guys for the 110. You know what I mean? It's amazing that a quarterback, especially a quarterback, and I understand he had a bad year. He had a down year. Look, I drafted him in super flex leagues. I understand some of the pain that Jared Goff owners faced. But remember, that team still has Robert Woods. It still has Cooper Kupp. It still has Brandon Cooks. Both of those tight ends flashed this year. Todd Gurley, yeah, is he aching? Is he maybe not what he used to be? 100%. But he can go in spurts. I mean, we've seen a game here, a game there, where he can be the Todd Gurley of old. That's a good offense. And don't let 1 year of him not producing elite numbers. The Dynasty 101 shirt. Shout out to those guys. They're the best.
That's to Kyle. I still have these. I was supposed to ship them to him like, I don't know, 8 months ago. Sorry, Kyle.
Sorry, Kyle. You can blame me. It's okay. But yeah, I mean, you can't panic in Dynasty. Panic moves like that end up with you at 110 taking, a guy that doesn't pan out, and you gave up Jared Goff because you panicked because of one season. So on that note, we're gonna go to our final point for today. A lot of people on Twitter are starting to prepare for the 2020 season. What's your process before the NFL draft, and have you adjusted it since last year? So I'll start with myself because Bill is the draft expert. He is the quarterback guru on the show. I'm just a talking head, but what I do, I love the NFL draft. I've loved it since, I can remember. The first draft I can remember watching completely was 1999. Peyton Manning getting drafted. And I fell in love ever since. I watch every pick, every round, everything. I just love the draft. And now that I'm in more dynasty leagues, I love draft Twitter and dynasty Twitter, Devy Twitter, because if you know who to follow, you can get some really good information from some really smart people. And my process is to try to find those people and kind of add them to the group of people that I already have that I trust and that are pretty accurate on players in the process. Yeah, I wish you and I had hooked up before last year's draft, because I probably would have had me a whole lot of Gardner Minshew. But because I was not so wise, I did not end up with any. And you had some nice things to say about him. And, he ended up becoming a fantasy player for a few weeks this year. So what's your process, Bill? What do you do? I know you're looking at quarterbacks and doing a lot of different things.
Yep. So for Dynasty 101, they have a rookie digest. So it's a publication with 150 pages of players, 1 page per player, just talking about the pros, cons. So I do the quarterbacks, which is the easiest one because there's only 15 to 20 of them, mm-hmm. where running backs, I'm sure there's 40 or 50. And, so I'm starting to do that. But just for my personal dynasty, I listen to so many podcasts, and, there's so much information overload. Everybody's got an opinion. It's hilarious to me. Like, weekly, people change their opinions, just because the wind blew this way, people like this guy, wind blows that way, people like that guy. One analyst says something about a player and it just completely drives the value of the player. Like, right. It's just crazy. And so I kind of fall, like, I'm really taking a step back. I'm going to listen to all the podcasts still because I just enjoy them. It's just mm-hmm. entertainment to me. But I'm taking way less opinions into, my drafts this year. And I kind of talked about it earlier about, just draft capital is the biggest driver. And, once you get into that third, fourth round, then you can kind of take your flyers on guys you like. And, right. So my process is just don't listen to everything, don't retain all the information that people give you, because at the end of the day, that's the last, they have such little impact on the actual results of, if you're going to pick a guy or mm-hmm. if, the NFL is going to pick a guy, because right. they have so much more data than we do at the end of the day. So, it's funny, like, just pick certain people that you respect that have shown that they have ability of, judging a certain position, and, you go with it. And, they're not necessarily, I'm wrong all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, so, yeah. I just trust the NFL more than I trust myself, point blank. So, right. So I'm just, this year off season is more about, like, reviewing my personal teams, mm-hmm. kind of seeing where I think they're going to be for this season. Am I going to be, a contender? What kind of moves can I make as we get closer to the draft? What picks, what leagues am I wanting to draft players? What leagues am I wanting to move them for veterans? Move the picks for veterans. That's kind of where I am, is starting to just look at those teams and evaluate those and making decisions that way. And, kind of trying to be less influenced by all the draft information, which is hard, because if you're taking in so much content, you're going to be, influenced and have a bias. And so it's just all about discipline, I guess, and trying to right the ship and not be too swayed one way or the other when you hear one of the big time people telling you they like a player. I mean, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but there was somebody who was like one of the biggest dynasty names out there that was completely, a Hakeem Butler guy, and was still pushing Hakeem Butler after the draft.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he may end up being great, but this year, I saw Hakeem Butler get drafted like 202 in drafts.
Ooh.
And it's like, holy shit,
Yeah.
He was drafted in the 4th round. How are you drafting a rookie guy, in the early 2nd? It just doesn't make any sense, because, somebody was influenced by this big name, dynasty analyst. And,
he wasn't even the first guy they took.
No, there was another guy that was taken in the 2nd round that they, so it's just it's crazy. And, it happens every year. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be a fun year. There's, like Kyle said, there's going to be so many RB trains this year of people like hyping up this running back or that running back. And, which one do you pick? Like, there's like, I don't know which guy's better than the next guy. Pick the type of player you like. Some people like those high volume guys. Other guys like the shifty guys who's going to catch more passes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to like Najee Harris, who's more of a big guy, but he does catch some passes? Or are you going to like, I don't know. I don't know enough about the college guys to honestly say, like, DeAndre Swift, how different is he than Najee Harris, or how different is he than Jonathan Taylor? So, and yeah, it's going to be fun.
I agree with you. I mean, at the end of the day, dynasty, and when you're a first-year dynasty player, or you're going into your first rookie draft, what I'm about to say is very hard, but you got to do it. You have to find your own process. Bill listens to a ton of podcasts. So do I. I'm on Twitter a lot. There are a lot of people on Twitter who are experts, they say. So it's hard to sift through that and wade through all that information and find your process. But at the end of the day, these are your teams. You need to find your process. Bill has a process. I have a process. Our processes are not the same. We sit here and we talk for hours about fantasy football. We agree on some things, we disagree on other things. But our processes are totally different. And that's fine. But you have to find your process, and you always have to be tweaking your process. Like I said, there are 2 or 3 guys that I listen to and I follow, and they've historically shown that they're pretty good at analyzing rookies and picking the good ones and sifting through the bad ones. But I'm always looking for one more guy. But that one more guy has to kind of have the same track record of, and no one is going to get it right 100% of the time. Even the guys I follow, they're good. They do the work. They watch the film. I follow a lot of analytics guys too, who are into the numbers of everything. But nothing is ever 100%. So you got to find the guys that have good track records. You have to look at things yourself and see, but you just can't believe everything you hear either. So on that note, we're going to wrap this thing up.
So don't listen to what I say for the next 4 months is what I'm saying. So
Listen to Bill. He does the work.
Yeah, listen to Bill. Do not listen to Bill.
Listen to Bill. He does the work. Me, I just shout whatever comes into my head at the time. I'm probably the person you shouldn't listen to. But, we're going to wrap this thing up. If you were on the live stream, Kyle was chatting with us. We appreciate you, whether you threw a comment out there or not. We do appreciate it. If you're on YouTube, remember to subscribe and click the bell so you know when we go live. If you're listening to us on podcasts, we appreciate it. Tell your friends. They can find us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, Google Play. We're everywhere. If you like what you hear, let your friends know. Even if they're in the league with you, don't worry. Tell us that you were listening to us first. We'll give you super special advice. But on that note, I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. My main man who just killed it today, Bill at Super Duper Flex. We're out of here.
Late.